Hi guys, welcome to Carly's Creative Clay. At the end of the countdown timer I will be continuing to make my troll from polymer clay. See you then. Hi guys, welcome. I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. Over the past couple of weeks we've been working on this mountain troll. He originally came from a picture by, I still can't pronounce his name, Ivan Rudigrin. This is the picture that inspired this make. So it's a Norwegian story of a troll sitting and becoming a mountain. So this is where we got to with it. We've done the main troll, so let's bring him up so you can see better. And down here we've got a little person looking up at him and a boat.
Fairy Hedgehog says looking good.
Thank you, Fairy Hedgehog. Thank you for turning up and your nice comment. Right, now, a couple of things that I've done off of screen that I said that I would do. My first ever attempt at colour washing and dry brushing. So, I filmed a bit of both and I'll talk you through what I did. So first it was the colour washing. So, as you can see, I've mixed up water and very dark brown paint, and I'm painting it over the top of the statue, and then I'm using tissue paper to blot the paint off the surface so that it's just in the cracks. It helps highlight the cracks and make them stand out, as well as the texture. So that was that stage, and I'd done a whole thing like that. You do get through a bit of tissue and it is a kind of messy process, but it really is worth it, I think. So you can see the bits that I've done as opposed to the bits that I've not done. Yep. Right, so the next thing I did, once that was dry, leave it 24 hours to dry off. Then after that I went on to dry brushing. Now that is also acrylic paint, mixed up some whites, some browns, some greys. You're going to put very little on the brush, then you dab it off on a bit of kitchen roll like that, so you really have the smallest amount, and you're brushing across the surface of the statue. The purpose of that gives it that nice rock colours, and again also picks up the texture a lot better. It makes it look more rock-like. And I've got to say, dry brushing was so much fun. I'm going to totally get into doing this more often, because yeah, it was a really nice process and really did turn this from one colour into looking really sort of like a happy rock. Yeah, thank you, Fairy Hedgehog. Perfect words. Yeah. So, that's where we're up to. Now, I've left it 2 days since I did that because I want it fully dry. I've been told if you try and put wet acrylic into the oven, it's just going to crumble off and you end up with a nice pile of acrylic paint chips at the bottom. So, that's not what we want. So there's two things I want to do. I want to add some actual greenery, some plant life to the troll, and I want to do more to this water. I'm going to put wave breaks, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. But let's first start out with some greenery. Now, I have mixed these up out of various greens, yellows and browns and whites. That was that green with black, that was that green with a bit of brown, that's a green you can buy straight off of Fimo, as is that one, that's green and bright yellow, that's green and ochre, they're greens and whites. So you get the idea of how I got to that. And I've got a bit of brown in case I want to make some trees. In case I forget, if I'm going to make trees, I'm using florist wire that's 22 gauge, so really quite thin. and that's just to give the trunk some stability. Really dry mouth today. So let's start out by doing a few of those big mossy patches. Now I don't want to do a solid green, so I'm going to take a couple of different shades that are similar to each other, so probably like that and a bit of that one, and I'm going to push them together, give them a bit of a twist around, make it so that it looks like the different colours merging together a bit. Now that's a bit thick, so I can cut that down the middle and use it for two different patches, like so. So what I'm going to start out with is doing some across these ledges, like so, and I'm going to make sure that it's not a completely straight edge and you can see the rock like that. Bring it round into that corner a bit more, and then you've got to really make sure when you're bonding raw clay to baked clay that you've got it pushed down really well, like that. Now I'm going to come in and do some texturing, but I'm going to put a few more patches like that knocking around. Now moss and grass grows on a flat surface if it can, so that's what you're going to try and aim for, are flat patches.
You mean like upward face?
So the upward facing, perfect term, thank you Jamie. So they look kind of like big blobs at the moment, but once we start to stipple them in, they will look far more like greenery and less like lumps of lumps of clay really. So some of them I'm not going to put too much, so I'm not going to cover the whole ledge. I'm just going to do little patches on like that big triangle. So we are going to come in a minute and put some hair and a beard on him using greenery as well, but I want to come in and do these patches first because it's going to be harder to get in and stipple once you've got a beard dangling down. That makes sense? I'm just pushing some in on the top of the legs there, and it's good how far just that small amount we made up will go. If you don't like the pattern that's in the shades, just give it another twist and you'll get a new mix in. Whoop. This one is going to be right under there, so I'm going to probably need to get a ball tool in to push that one on. So if you can see right under there in the base at the base of those legs, and I'm not bothered about leaving marks with my ball tool because we're about to stipple all this in anyway. But if you wanted to push it down without leaving any marks, I would say use something flat like a rubber tipped tool, but just make sure it's all pushed down fine.
You might want to move the statue more centre.
I'm gonna move, sorry, yeah, that, thank you. So where else do we need? Probably a little bit on the tops of those feet. I'm just gonna smooch some in
It's alright, I'm going to zoom a bit.
like that. Let's bring that down there. It's been a lot of fun, this statue. I don't think this is going to be the last time I do trolls. And something really nice, I got contacted by someone saying they would be interested in buying this once I finished making it, which is really awesome. Again, I won't get too excited until the sale actually goes through, because these things can always be pulled out of. But it weren't someone I know, it was a complete stranger, which is always really touching when people like my work like that. So we're getting there with this greenery now. It's actually, I think, looking far more like a mountainside than it did where it was just bare rocks. Although there are parts of this country, well, not this country, because England's got a lot of greenery, but there's parts of this planet where there's a lot of bare rocks. I think we went somewhere once where the country was very much no real grass laying on the rocky surface. I think it's a heat thing. But yeah, I'm lucky. England does well for greenery. And we've been getting some rain recently, which is I love. I know some people really don't, but
Hearty Life says, hiya.
hi Hearty Life. It's lovely to have you. I'm just putting greenery on rocks. I know it's looking a bit like not like grass at the moment, but I will be stippling it all in so it does. Right. Little bit more on that top platform there. Once I've gone round and I've done some placement like this, it's going to be far easier to see what I'm doing with the rest of the hair and the beard. So yeah, I just didn't want to do more of it off camera than I already had, because I'd already done quite a bit. Let's smudge that one in. What do you think? Should I put some on the tops of his hands there?
No, it might be.
Yeah?
It might cover too much detail.
I could put a small bit like that.
It's up to you, but the artist.
What do you reckon?
Looks good to me.
Like that. Some more on that kneecap as well, because both knees are bare.
Fairy hedgehog or Hearty like that, in your opinion.
Right. I think that's where I'm going to stay with the green patches. And what I do is I made up these little tools. And what I've done was I got a whole load of sewing needles, threaded them onto a string that had a knot, then wound the strings round each other to make them into this nice sort of bunch. And then you pack clay around it.
Fairy hedgehog says,
Give it a bake.
you put a happy little bit of moss wherever you like.
Thank you. And what that means is when you start to stab at your clay, you haven't got to do it one pin prick at a time. You can use lots of them together and it goes so much quicker. It's a really good tool to make yourself.
Fairy hedgehog says, that's ingenious. Hearty Life says, very clever.
Thank you. I think if I was to make them again, I would probably make the strings not as tightly wound together, because they're very close to each other. I may, when I get time and some more needles, make some that are a bit more spaced out. But I'll show you what it does. Let's do it on a patch that you can see really clearly. There we go, the tops of the hands and the arm. Right, let's hold it up. Can you see the stippling that it does? Especially under there, I've done that one pretty well. It turns these plain patches into really looking like somewhere between grass and moss. And it's so quick. This is why I love this tool. Before I made it, when I did hair and grass and all that sort of stuff, I was literally using a single needle, and you can tell how long that would take just to come in and draw all those lines. It's like those kids who, when they're writing lines for their teachers, tape a load of pens together onto a ruler, so it's all spaced out right.
Eric Hedgehog says it makes a big difference.
It does, yes, it really does. So I'm going to just do a few of these where the beard and the hair's going to fall, and then I'll do the ones that are well out of the way later on off screen, so you're not watching me stippling absolutely everything. But once I've got hair on, it's going to be really hard to get down to these ones. And yeah, the hair, I'm going to use the greens, and I'm going to make it into like vines, and that's what I plan to make hair and beards out of. That's why I've got so many greens, is because I want to do that. And once I've seen where the hair and the beard lay, then I can start putting in some bushes and trees, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So probably these two up the top, there's no way that that long hair isn't gonna interfere with these platforms, but I do expect to be able to put at least a bush on one of these.
Says, does it have to be something as rigid as needles? What about a toothbrush or a raggedy old stiff toothbrush?
Toothbrushes, I have tried. The bristles literally just bend. The other thing I use is you can get metal kind of toothbrushes, but they're like scrubbing brushes. They also work quite well, but if you see, the dots on them are a lot finer. Let's see, can you even zoom in that well? Let's hold it up even more. Yeah, that's better. Very, very fine, small one. You can go round after the big ones and do that, but what I find is it packs in the dots you've already done with the needles. So I tend not to, unless I'm really going for something that has almost a suede effect with it. Talking of which, one day I need to get hold of some of that Fimo leather effect. I've heard interesting things about it.
Hardy Lashes, I have one of those. I think it's for scrubbing rust off metal. That
Yeah.
seems reasonable.
Pound Shop sells them in a pack of 3, and I use them for getting limescale off around the sinks. But I bought a pack with the idea of doing this stippling with it. But yeah, as you can see, it does do a good effect. It's just very different from what we're going for. The other thing you're going to find, cleaning in between those blades, you've got to sit there with, I usually use one of my cotton pads. I dunk this in isopropyl alcohol and then splay them and get in between like that. You don't want to accidentally colour transfer. So we've got the ones around the head nice and stippled in. There's always going to be bits falling off a baked statue when you do things that are crumbly like rocks. Right, so what we need to do, let's move that out of the way, is we start out with the dark colours and then we layer it up to the lighter ones. We're going to break off a whole lot of balls, because you can do hair in a big sheet, but I find it really comes out looking like you've done a sheet that you've just scored into. If you're going to do it properly, you might as well do it properly and make individual hairs, or at least sort of larger ones, so they're not as fine as that hair. But what we're talking is probably, roll it in a ball, I'll show you, roll it out in a stick, that sort of thickness, so it looks like probably a little clump of hair together, but it still looks far more actual, like it should. Now, because I'm doing the beard first, I'm going to point both ends and then fold it over like that. So then you've got two strands. I'm going to get the statue. I'm going to put it more central when I put the beard hair on. So we've got to push that. Still a bit long. Dang it. Let's trim it. There we go. Trim down a bit. I'm going to push it on and then I'll show you. So we've got our first two dangling down there. Can you see? Right in the gap there. Yeah, I know they're dark, but we're going to build up with lighter ones. So like that. That's good for the start of the beard. Let's come in with a couple of these because I'll use some of these on hair. So already have established we're going to need it quite short, so like so, and you're just going to bring them out into tiny little points and push them on. And if you can't get your hands under there, which gets harder and harder, you can use things like ball tools and your rubber tools, or I love this one. This is a set you get from, I got mine from eBay. There's like 30-40 different tools in it, all metal handled. I think it was under a tenner, though I can't be sure because it's like 3 or 4 years old. And I just come in and I'll add it in like so. There we are, we've got the next one in. So do another dark one. I'm going to put a couple in place before I show you what I've done, because it's going to take forever if I hold it up each time. Right, let's go for something slightly lighter around the edge. Like so. It's good to have a couple of greens. I know, especially in FIMO, the small 56 gram packs, there's a much wider colour range, but you can mix your own colours up. So I find that when I buy a very wide range of different colours, at least a couple of them will sit there for years, and it ain't good. It's better just to mix it up yourself, then you've got what you need. So really, if you're being honest, you only need red, yellow, blue, black and white, although I always get a brown in that mix because browns are really hard to mix up yourself. Right, let's stick a few brights on there and then I'll hold it up for you, because it's harder to see, because at the moment the colours I've used are the same ones as the moss, which is why I've got some of these brighter ones to make the beard and hair stand out far more. That makes sense? And we've got to look at doing something over the top around the chin to make it, the join line, look less rubbish. Here we are. Right, that's it so far. See what I mean? Now what I'm probably going to do is come in with a few pals that are a lot shorter and really actually try and make it so that the line across the jaw looks more like a beard would. And how I plan to do that is I'm going to feather the top edge, and I'll show you how to do that once I've got these stuck on. You can't feather what you ain't got on there. So what you're doing is you're trying to make sure you add in a very even line where you want that hairline to be. Right, 32 seconds with this. I should have made up a load of strands beforehand. That's me not thinking properly, isn't it? There we go. Right, one last one on. And yeah, right. As a side note, I do find that you can get these little units that have these kind of little plastic drawers. They're brilliant for use for storing your mixed up colours in. So I tend to mix up more than I need, because then I can just store them in the future. So can you see across that chin, it looks like lots of big semicircle bumps, almost like a fence top. Doesn't look very real. What I'm going to do is come in with a pin tool or a needle tool and just score some lines across that top, just to make it so that it looks more jaggedy. Whoops, it's coming off there. Push it back down. Got to make sure they're stuck on properly before you do this, or you just scrape them straight off, like so. And I'm just scoring on some of these top hair blocks to make them more look like hair, like a beard, and I will hold it up in 2 seconds and show you what I've done. Right, let's see. Can you see that properly? Let's hold it up even more. How I've sort of scored the top so it looks more like a hairline. Yeah? Right. So that's that. Now we've got to decide, do I want a moustache on it? I think it will cover the mouth too much. I really do. Maybe a little thin one. We can do tiny thin. And what I'm going to do with that is get 2 different shades of green, small amount, put them next to each other, twist them up a bit, so we've got sort of a spirally type look. Roll that out, then I can break that in half and use these as a moustache. So again, it's not just one block colour, but the more you twist it, the finer and more lines you end up with. And that can simulate sort of that strands of hair look without having to get in there and carve it all out. So let's put him on his back and get this moustache in, and it's gonna need to join right up under that nose. So I'll come in with a ball tool to make sure that it's pushed into place, but this time I'm gonna smooth it down a bit. So like that. Maybe let's bring that point out a little more. There we go. What do you think? If I do the other side, and then you can tell me with or without a moustache.
No, I love it.
You like it? Jamie says with. Let's do the other side. Like this. Push that into place. And give him a little flick at the end. What do you think? Keep? Yeah? Okay. If we're keeping, I'll do a few score lines on it, so again it doesn't look so like handlebar.
Anybody else has an opinion, right?
If anyone else has an opinion, do say. This is it. I should hold it up once I've put in these lines. The reason why I'm not using my big tool, one of these, I'm using these, the pin tool, is because you've got more precision.
Hedgehog says, love the beard and tash.
You love the beard and tash. Brilliant.
I do think they really work very well.
Awesome. Right, there we go. Now that I've scored in some lines to it, it look more like it, yeah? Green moss coming off.
Colour wash the moss as well to darken the dark bits.
I may colour wash that. Lost some of that smudging. There we go. I'll have to have a look at it once it's done.
Because it looks a bit fresh compared to the rocks.
Yeah, but
that may be the look you want.
I'll have to have a look when it's done and see what I think. Right, so that's the beard done, and we're really doing something very similar again for the hair. So, whoops, move all this out the way. I'm being very cluttered today, aren't I? We're rolling out a lot longer strands this time. So this time I'm going to use the glass countertop to get me some nice length, because there's no way he would have short hair. Even the one in the picture doesn't. Although I have had it pointed out that the one I'm making has not got any clothes on, whereas the one in the picture does.
Why would you need clothes?
Yeah.
How would a rock troll made rock make clothes?
Arguably he's probably made his clothes before he got old, tired and sat down. Because that's the stories, that he sat down and was thinking over something and sat there for so long he turned into a mountainside. But which is cute. And there are some stone piles that do look like they're the body of someone laying down, and it's just natural coincidence, but these things spark stories. And one thing Norway has a lot of is mountains and rock formations, so I can see where it all came from, and it's a nice little story. And it's been so much fun to make. Where he's sat down, the ergonomics of making a guy where you're just pushing arms and legs onto a main big base, far easier. As soon as they start standing up, then you need wire frames and all that mechanical thinking. So I got some greens, different lengths, making sure they've tapered down to the bottom. So let's go for a couple of the other dark green, and we can do the first layer then. Now it's up to you whether you want to go dark at the bottom and light on top, but it helps with the shading. It looks more accurate, I think. I mean, there are people who have their hair dyed light underneath and dark on top, so it's not wrong. It's entirely possible, but I think this looks kind of more like you expect. And you can dual wield, if you can dual wield clay balls and do two at once. What I'm doing is I'm using these two fingers to bring them out. It takes a little bit more fiddling, but you practice it and you get there, and then that means your time's halved. That makes sense? So what we're going to do is give him kind of a widow's peak, so that sort of shape, and then wavy the hair down the head, like so. So that's the first one in. Yeah? And I am going to alternate along that point, putting in some of these dark hairs, like so. Wavy just makes it all sit together a lot more easier. Do, if you can, try and join the bottom of the hair to something, because it's just another, if it's free floating, it's another thing that can snap off, if that makes sense. And I'm going to go down till I hit the rocks at the back, like that, and then come down the other side, spin it around. Now I'm not going to put the same colour on either side, I'm going to alternate it, and again that's up to you whether you want to do that, but that is what I think will look cool. And you're just going to fill it in, and then once you've got your first cover, you're going to do basically the same thing again, but with some lighter colours over the top. And instead of trying to line them so that they're sitting directly on top, you're going to just put them so that they lay in between, the little V between the two as they join, if that makes sense. I'll show you in a second anyway, but let's get some of these quickly rolled out. Oh, I'm definitely getting tired of not going out, not being able to hug people, but it's still necessary at the moment, which is really annoying. Right, couple more of these. Now you can put a fringe on, and if I was to do a fringe, I would probably hook it under like that and curve out like that, but a lot shorter, probably about that length. So you're basically making something akin to a teardrop, and then you're going to get it, put it on the front and hook it over so it's like that, and then push it down and do a line of those. But I'm not wanting a fringe on my one, but I thought I'd tell you, if you did, how you do it. You can put the fringe on first and then put the main part of the hair on. That's also another option. Why are you lining up like that? There we go, move you over. Even with alternating, they still manage to line up as the same colours. Makes no sense. Probably got different thicknesses going on. There we go. Right, break that there. So we got our first coating of hair on him, like so. Looking more like it already, I think. Let's make sure there's a definite peak going on there. Right, clear up the dark colours, get it out of the way, and I'm going to go for some of these lighter and yellower greens, possibly with that in between. That looks good to me. So same again, couple of balls of colour, and you're going to bring them out into strands, and they're going to need to be slightly longer than the strands that you did for the first ones, because they've got a further width to go over. let's put a couple of these in the mix. So I hope you've all been having a good week. The weather has been amazing. It's not been boiling hot, which I love. It's been like this perfect, you can't even notice it temperature. Wonderful. That's my favourite. That, then winter, then really hot summer, because hot summer absolutely ruins me. Right, what do you think? That little colour mix looks good to me. So for the next layer of hair, oops, it's got some dark there. And like I did with the moustache, you can mix colours together and then turn them into individual sticks. That is also an option. But I'm keeping it simple and keeping them as one uniform colour. So, like this. Sorry, I'll be 2 seconds rolling all this out. Now, whilst I'm doing this, I'll tell you what I've done to make up the where the water's going to break against the feet and the base. I've mixed up liquid polymer clay. So this is liquid Fimo. Sculpey does their own one. It is pretty cool stuff. It dries like almost transparent PVC. Quite a flexible plastic. I mixed that in with some mica powder and some actual clay to make up these very thick pastes. That's the white. I've done it in silver and a very light blue. Now, a lot of people, when they do this, will just mix pigment powder, either mica or chalk, with the liquid clay, and what I've found is that it's quite runny, so you can't pull little waves out of it, which is what I actually want to do. So take a pinch of clay of the same colour you want your liquid to be, put a pinch in, and then you need to smush it in. I use that bit of that tool. You can use a ball tool, you can technically use your finger. It will end up covered in clay, but there you go. Just wipe it off after.
I've got to interrupt because quite a while ago I said this recent weather suits me much better too. I can't stand the heat. I rather like the autumn.
Yeah, autumn's lovely, and I love autumn colours. I really do. If baby animals were born in autumn, then we'd have no need for any other season, because all your fruit comes in autumn as well, which is nice, because I've got a lot of raspberries in my back garden. So I've got some of these made up. Let's put them on and I'll show you what I mean by in the gaps. Can you see here you've got the two colours next to each other? So this one is going in there, so it sits just in between like that. Whoops, don't stick to my finger, stick to the model. You know when you need to give your hands a wipe, because the clay wants to stick to your finger more than the... Did I just drop some? I'll pick that up later. Yeah, you get used to the feeling of clay that is enjoying sticking to your finger far more than sticking to the piece, and then just give your hands a bit of a wipe. It's another one that comes with experience. So this top layer, I'm pushing it a lot more. I'm pushing it down flat a lot more than I did with the layer underneath, so that it's not so sticking up. And I'm concentrating on having a prettier wave on this layer than I was with the layer underneath as well, because it's much more visible. So that's one side. See what I mean? We do some more over here. So let's bright colour in there, I think. Like that. Bit of a wave. And you do a wave just by holding one bit and then pushing the clay upwards, and it does these nice little crinkles, which I think's really pretty. Let's do that colour. That looks better. There we go. And you'll have a fiddle around, and sometimes you'll take some off because you think that it's not the right colour for the next one after all. And it's good because you can just take stuff off you don't like. And especially in the early days where I weren't sure what I actually liked, I used to chop and change around a whole lot more than I do now. Now I'm pretty good at staying with the vision that I had in the first place. I say that, I've got something called aphantasia, which means you can't actually imagine in pictures, which is good fun for a clay artist.
Evie Martin says, ooh, strong with natty dreads.
Yeah, it's the easiest way of doing hair, and it would be. I can't imagine they do brushes in his size. So I think I'm able to do this dready type hair and it still be in character. I think if I did a majorly impressive hairstyle, that would be less likely. Right, last one in, like this. There we go. Right, that's it round the back, and that's him round the front. Yeah, I'm so pleased with that. Now, how I'm going to make some of these little bushes is like this. I'm going to get some bits of different coloured clay, different shades of the green. So, I had some of that, didn't I? Dark one, bright one, very dark, medium dark, bits of it all in together. Then I'm getting my tissue blade and I'm going to chop it all up into small random bits, and we're going to mix them together like so. We need to go smaller than that, and the smaller you go, the more it looks like leaves together in a bush. So bit of a mix up still, chop 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 chop. And this is actually even better when you've got dry and crumbly clay, because that naturally falls into small bits. I mean, technically you should be conditioning it, and again, liquid polymer clay is, I find, is the best stuff to add to dry and crumbly clay. They do clay softener, but it's the solid, and mixing that in can be the devil's own work, I tell you. Right, can you see now we've got little piles of green? You can then pick up a few bits together, give it a very, very gentle squidge, and put that in as a bush. So let's put another one on, and I will hold it up. You're not being that gentle pushing it on, because you can always come back in with a needle tool to re-pick out some texture. But if it don't stick, you're then using 2-part epoxy to try and get it to re-glue back on. And small bits, it's next to impossible to not make the glue show. That makes sense. For a bush though, if you want to get a bush texture with a needle tool, tiny little circles. Instead of stabbing directly in with like we did with the moss, you want to go little circles. Little scraped circles on the surface, yeah. And it looks far more like it. Just do the second one up here. There we are. Right. So there's one bush. And there's the other one I did. See? The other thing you can do, if you want...
Just so stop the time, isn't it? The stuff with that texture is just because we're...
Yes.
Time,
it's purely a time thing. The other thing you can do is get your thin florist wire, push that in to the clay. Let's use my needle tool. Little hole with your needle tool because it's baked, and you can push some florist wire into that hole. I find it's easier to push in and then cut it than trying to push in a small bit. The amount of times I've just embedded florist wire in my hands doing that is not fun. So, got a little bit of florist wire sticking out there now. You can see just there. Can you see that bit of florist wire there?
Yeah.
Yeah? Then you can push your bush onto that. And that's another way of helping it anchor. So, light ball. And then push that directly onto that wire. Like so. I just tend to not bother with that extra step and just push them on. Like that. So it's another way of doing some greenery. And if you wanted to do trees, which is the last thing I'll show you, again you're going to use the florist wire, but this time we're going to cut a small bit off like so. I'm going to get a very small bit of brown, probably less than that actually, little bit of brown. I'm going to push that with the florist wire in the middle. Oops, like so. Yeah. Then you bring the brown up the wire by twisting like that. So you're wrapping the brown around the wire. Then you can push that on. Let's find a place that looks good with the tree. That'll do. You push the bottom of that onto your rock, and then you add a ball of this to the top of it, and you've got a tree. Yeah? So, I'm going to go around and going to do that in a few more places and stipple in all this moss. The last thing that I'm going to then do is the wave breaking. Let's get this out of the way so that I can do this.
Are you doing the trees now?
Nope, I've demonstrated a tree. I'll probably do one or two more off of camera.
So you move on to the waves.
I'm going to move on to the waves because I've showed. All I'm going to do is moss, trees and bushes. So instead of you having to sit there and watch me do this for ages, let's get some of these out. Right. This is my favourite tool for this. Make sure I've got no clay on it. What you're going to do, if I hold it up, you can see it's very, very thick, stringy. Looks kind of like toothpaste consistency. We're going to put little blobs of that at the base. It's the back of the thing that I need it on, not the front. Right, little blobs. I will hold it up once I put some on. Whoop. Right, let's not smudge up the rest of my clay. So can you see? And then you flick it a bit and it looks more foamy. Yeah? I'm going to do that with the blue and the grey. So put a bit of blue in there and mix it in, and a bit of grey. If you mix it all together in the pot, it mixes too much. I'll show you once I put both on. There we go. Can you see there's blue, grey, blue, silver and white in that?
You're going to do the whole shoreline.
And I'm going to do anything where there's a solid touching the water. So, whoops, yep, give me a second, like that. And it does take a while, it really does, but it is worth the effort, I think, because it looks far more like waves breaking than any other way of doing clay. You can, if you want to do it quicker, just do the white, but again, that's very one tone. So we just go around, and you haven't got to be neat, just adding in the 3 colours. Whoops, I always manage to dribble. I'm brilliant at it. Bit more blue in there and a bit of silver. And once you put the 3 colours on, then you can come in and make it look more like waves breaking. So before I put all this clay on, it was easier to pick up, wasn't it? Stay. Let's do that. Right. There. So I've already done there. I'm probably going round there, all the way around there, all the way around the rocks, round the back, round the little island, and through the feet.
The thing you haven't mentioned is that when it's baked, it goes semi-transparent.
Right. Yes. Liquid, Thermo liquid. It's meant to go fully transparent. The liquid Sculpey seems to go almost fully transparent, just slightly cloudy. Thymo liquid goes kind of cloudy. And very, very slightly yellowed. So adding pigments to it is the way to go, I find. And I tend to like using mica powder because it gives it that metallic shine, especially for water. So, gonna go around, do all that, get it baked, get it varnished, then it'll be finished. So it's gonna probably take me a good 3 or 4 days, the way I work, to get all this finished. But I will share it out on my Facebook, so either look up Carly Langridge or Carly's Creative Clay, or I may do a very short video of me just giving it a spin around once so you can have a look to see it done. Okay, I'm going to leave it here tonight. I hope you all have a really great week, and I will see you next week. I'm not sure what I'm making yet, but I'm sure it'll be something fun. Probably something crypto creatured, because that's what I've been doing recently. Well, either which way, have a great week, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Okay? Let's hold him up while we go out. Let's okay. Right. Let's say goodbye to everyone. Bye!